nothing that they say is true. Miranda never made it to the place called Guantanamo. Help me out, I wanna be anonymous. Help me out, I wanna be anonymous. Help me out, I wanna be anonymous. Don't really matter anyway. With the state the world is empty, and we're living on borrowed time, living on borrowed time, living on borrowed time. I read all about your disease. Change your blood, stick it in the deep freeze. You believe everything that you see. Tell me where to get your lobotomy. Did you read about the tortoise and the hippopotamus? Help me out, I wanna be anonymous. Help me out, I wanna be anonymous. Help me out, 'cause I wanna be anonymous. Don't really matter anyway. Hey, yeah, yeah, yeah. State that the world is empty. And we're living on borrowed time. Living on borrowed time. Living on borrowed time. Take it.
How's that? Does that work? We have sound? No, I'm not. No, my computer is having fun with me the last 2 days. It says I've got sound now. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you, Maggie. By the way, thank you, Maggie, for subscribing. I appreciate it. So everybody can hear me now, right? We got good sound. Phew. I was getting worried because, me and technology, we have a bit of a love-hate relationship. I have 59 slides. We may go over a little bit. Just a little bit. I hope not too much. I'm tired. And I don't want to waste your time. So I'm just going to jump in. We've got so much to talk about today. What I did so far kind of gave you some how to look for some numbers, how to look for some patterns, how they relate to the Bible, how much of Q is in the Bible, and how that's been kind of my guide as I go through a lot of the stuff we have to go through with decoding. But it's helped me tremendously as I go through the Vatican research. Then I took you through a little bit of history. I'm going to take you through a little bit more today because we're going to get into the Vatican Bank stuff. But so I got to give you some background as to what the heck happened at the Vatican Bank. And yes, there's a few decodes in there. And then I'm going to go through, I guess, from the transition from Pope Benedict to Pope Francis. And then how Pope Francis hit the ground running, because he really did. How that guy got that fast, I don't know. But let me start today with talking about the agenda, if you want. There's been, since the 70s, there's been this anti-Italian Pope idea going through the conclave. Obviously, because of all the corruption that started in the 70s and went through the 80s. It was worldwide news when Propaganda Duo was raided, when Franklin Bank went down, and you had an archbishop involved in all of that, and plus the CIA. So there's been this activity to do anything but an Italian Pope. Forgive my allergies. And how that's worked out. So we've and think about it, since Pope John Paul II, we have not had an Italian Pope. Yet Pope John Paul II was Polish, Pope Benedict was German, Pope Francis is Argentinian, and now we've got, of course, Pope Leo, who's American, although I think he still considers himself American, but he's got a lot of Central America in him, Central and South America. So, but again, it's still that anything but an Italian Pope air that happens pre-conclave, and it kind of directs the conclave when they're electing a cardinal. We're going to talk about the St. Gallen Mafia because they knew that there was an air of anti-Italian, no matter how hard they tried. So they selected their people, and Pope Francis was one of them. He started his papacy, though, with shockwaves. Right from the moment he was made Pope, he didn't even want to dress in the traditional clothing. He, shed the red shoes, shed the red cape, all of the donning all of the pomp and circumstance, because that is anything but for him. And then he came in and started his job. So let me get right into it. I want to start with something. There is a book out there called Pope Francis, the Successor. It's a book about him and his relationship with Pope Benedict. I have not read the whole book. I've read pieces of it. I don't have the book personally to read, but it looks like it would be a pretty good book once I can find it in English. It just came out. But what you find out is that, and this is written by people who were close to Pope Francis and Pope Benedict, and we've heard this over the years, that the two of them were very close. They were like father and son, in that Pope Francis did rely on him to bounce ideas off of. Pope Benedict didn't usurp the role. He didn't play Pope with him. He would listen to him. He would say, yes, if you're thinking of that, you might want to consider this kind of thing. He was an advisor. And they got to be very, very close. In fact, it's uncanny because they didn't see eye to eye on many things, actually. So this book talks about their relationship as a whole, and how that understanding, you can kind of glean from it, how that came into the papacy. We also want to recognize that Pope Benedict was very close with Pope John Paul II. They often had dinner together. Pope Benedict was an invaluable resource for Pope John Paul II. And you saw Pope Benedict take Pope John Paul II's agenda and make it into, he brought it into his own agenda. And we saw the same thing from Benedict to Francis. We saw the same thing happen again, where Francis continued what Benedict started. And now we know for sure that Pope Leo is going to complete with Francis couldn't get done, which was a lot, but he did a masterful thing, but he couldn't get a lot done. One of the things that you have to recognize is it's because of the relationship he had with Benedict. I believe he knew he was going to get to a point where he could only do so much and he would have had to resign. I've been saying it for a while. He didn't resign out of fear. He didn't resign because he was sick, and it wasn't his age. I think he got as far as he could go, got enough established. The wolves in the Curia were preventing him from going too far. And I think that was always baked into his cake, if you will. Whether it was right away or within a couple of years, it seems like he always kept in mind the idea of resigning as the Pope. That said, pretty much the last 5 or 6 popes have contemplated resigning their seat. So I think it's really important to understand. And this guy here in the middle, this is the secretary for both of these guys. We got some continuity here, which is really interesting considering everything we go on. Their friendship is tight, but you've also got continuity because now Francis also has his secretary, which is a really fascinating thing because continuity does matter. And when you've got good old Cardinal Alfred here, kind of understanding what Pope Benedict was looking for, what some of the challenges he faced, and being able to give Pope Francis a kind of a heads up. There was this group called the St. Gallen Mafia. I don't know how many of you know about this. If you've been in my chat room, you've heard a lot about it because I've been talking about it for years. St. Gallen Mafia was a group of cardinals who used to meet in St. Gallen, Switzerland. In fact, this guy right here used to host them. Of all of these original people, this is from the 2005 conclave. This is the conclave that elected Pope Benedict. They wanted Pope Francis. They didn't get Pope Francis. They got Pope Benedict. And you know why they didn't get Pope Francis? Because Pope Francis took his vote away. He realized he was being used. He realized he didn't agree with what they were doing and how they were doing it. They were actually corrupting the conclave. So he said, no, I'm going to vote for Benedict. And he did. And they lost. And they dismantled until Pope Benedict decided to resign. They kind of tried to pull a group together. The person who started is Cardinal Casper, extremely liberal individual. In fact, next week we'll get into a little bit of the few of the stunts he pulled. But of these, you see the red circles. These two individuals died before the 2013 conclave, and all the yellow circles, they were ineligible to vote. So he had to get a new group of people together. And what's interesting about that is it wasn't as strong a group, but they were still vocal. They still tried to do everything they could to. This time they still wanted Pope Francis, and so they did everything they could to try to sway everybody's vote to Pope Francis. And it was really interesting because this time Pope Francis said, okay. Remember I told you last week there was an investigation done by 3 cardinals, all over the age of 80. They weren't going to be in the conclave. And they delivered a report in December of 2012 that outlined all of this criminality. And so Pope Benedict said, okay, this is beyond my papacy. I'm going to save it for the next person. And he prepared it for his successor. It means Pope Francis. And Pope Francis, having a good relationship with Benedict already knew about this investigation. So he came into office knowing, which is really interesting. Daniels wrote about it in a book. I don't know if he got a conscience, I don't know, but he called the group. That's where the group gets the St. Gallen Mafia term from. He referred to them as a mafia. So you've got now with the 2013 conclave, you've got of of all of the individuals there, there's only 3 that are still alive, and 2 of them cannot participate in the conclave, but they are there for the pre-conclave. I'm going to stop. Jane Lee, thank you so much for being a supporter. Ann Boyer, thank you so much. You guys are wonderful. I love you guys. Thank you so much for your support. I never know if I'm going to do okay. You guys kind of keep me going. I appreciate that. So Cardinal Daniels did talk about it. And the other thing he talked about is that many of them in the prelate, the curia, many of them are Freemasons, which is strictly against Catholic doctrine. In fact, people said it was a little confusing as to why, because the 1917 code kind of took that out because it assumed everybody knew. And then in 1983, they kind of redid that. That was Pope Benedict, who at the time was Cardinal Ratzinger. He reiterated no Freemasonry because of why, the reasons why are because it caused more confusion. And I could go into that another time. But still, what we're talking about here is the fact that here we are in 2023 and it came out again. You had a cardinal from Japan asking the question. And what's funny is they added in the 4th paragraph, these measures also apply to any clerics enrolled in Freemasonry. Kind of a neat little line to throw in there to the Japanese cardinal who's asking on behalf of the parishioners in his diocese. So this got thrown in, which is very interesting. And it's Cardinal Fernandez that put that in there, which I'm not a big fan of Cardinal Fernandez. And yes, he is the one that excommunicated Vigano, but we'll see where this goes. I don't know. There's a book that came out, The St. Gallen Mafia. In this book, she talks about how Pope Francis was foreordained. And all I could think of, as hindsight is always 20/20, but as you look through what Pope Francis accomplished, all I could laugh and say is, yeah, let's see what happens. You've heard that saying before. President Trump says that all the time. Let's see what happens, because Martini, as ruthless as he was, played right into their hands. And what's also interesting is in the 2013 conclave, we find out that the NSA was spying. Now we know. I know why, but they were listening in on communications in the Vatican. It came out in WikiLeaks. We know how it came out. I get why. There were other investigations going on, and they were ferreting out the CIA, Vatican money laundering. Remember, this is 2013. We're listening in to find out who else is funneling money through the Vatican Bank. This is before, if you recall, before Pope Francis started the auditing. But they find out that they've been ongoing since 2005. Let me give you fill in the history here. 2004, you got the 9/11 report with the infamous 28 pages. Or no, 2003, I'm sorry. You got the 9/11 report with the infamous 23 pages. In those 23 pages, I am sure the Vatican is mentioned because money was laundered through to here. Nevertheless, Bergoglio got 85 of the votes versus 10 for the other two, for Scola and Aulet. Aulet's very liberal. Scola is Italian, and he should have been, by any standard, he was considered to be the next pope, did not make it. So here we are, 85 votes in favor of in 2013 for Pope Francis. There was a decided decision to bring him in. So like I said, I know why that the NSA was listening in, and it goes back to 1974, finding out about Gelly coming all the way through. And remember, we've got the CIA that's using these 3 individuals as their financial intermediaries to disrupt the Italian government. So I'm pretty sure it has to do with the money laundering through that organization and some of the criminality that had been found out. So now we get through the conclave. Pope Francis is the reformer. He's now widely known as the reformer, where Pope Benedict was a theologian, admittedly did not, he was not good at governance. Pope Francis came in the exact opposite. And I think this is something that needed to happen, that we had somebody that was kind of keyed in on what's going on. In pre-conclave, there was a discussion. He says it's pre-conclave. I don't know if it was said in the conclave, to be very honest. It sounds like something Benedict would have advised him on as well, because one of Benedict's biggest problems as he tried to navigate through all of this was he didn't know who he could trust. He had no circle around him. I mean, he was often very lonely when it came to this kind of stuff. And so I think the cardinal of advisors that Pope Francis put together was for that purpose. This is day 1. By day 4, remember Pope Francis committed, a coup against the Bertone clan. Well, by day 4, Bertone is gone. He tells him he's fired. Now, he doesn't leave until November because Cardinal Parolin had to have surgery and he had to recover. But he's still, we're still in March, and he's telling Bertone, you're out of here. So this is right out of the gate. The only way he would have known to do that is if he had been pre-told some things. So keep that in mind, because I really do believe, I don't know if we'll ever know, but he wanted Parolin to be the Secretary of State because Parolin was also from South America and was not attached to Europe or the Italian prelates. The next thing he did within a month, in April of 2013, he sets up what he calls the C9. I want to point something out here that you'll see there's 10 people here in my mark. There it is. I'm losing there it is, my pointer. This guy was original. He's on the C9. He's then removed because of accusations of sex abuse scandals back in Chile. Then Parolin comes in November of 2013. He's made a cardinal, and he's brought in. So we've got Cardinal Parolin is now Secretary of State, and he is replacing him. So we're still at a C9. This guy, I cannot say his name, sorry, he's from the Congo. He ended up having to retire a couple years in because he had reached the mandatory age. And Cardinal Pell, we'll get into that story. That's a really interesting story as well, especially in light of what's going on right now. But these are the individuals that he brought around him. What was unique about them is they're from all over the world. They're not centrally located. They're not Europe. They're not Italian. They're literally from all 5 continents. So because of that, what we have is a diversity of opinions based on what's happening in their respective countries, which is a pretty good thing. When they were brought on, he said that he thought he needed these advisors to help him rewrite the Vatican Constitution, which they did. That was completed in 2022. And then also to help him do the daily management of the Vatican. It wasn't going over well with people like Bertone, but I don't think Pope Francis really cared what Bertone thought. So here's his memo setting that up, and he said that he wanted to establish, this is what he calls his privy council. It's got almost a no name, but he wanted to establish this group so that they could help him with daily governance and to help him navigate through some of the challenges that the Vatican was facing that had come out pre-conclave that the other cardinals were discussing. So here he had 2 things he asked for them: reform the Curia and to help him govern the church, which is where the Vatican Constitution came in. Reform the Curia it landed like a lead balloon. I'm sure you can imagine when you've got all these people, the wolves in the Vatican. I love the title of the book. I'm going to continue to call them that. The wolves in the Vatican did not do well with that statement. I'm pretty darn sure. Then the very next thing he does is he sets to looking at what's going on with this bank. When he came in, you got a $6 billion bank with a scandal a day almost. Those scandals made up the bulk of his reform mission. And as a result, in fact, I just pulled this today, the new IOR. This is as a result of the reforms that Pope Francis put in place. They've gotten this far. They've got a brand new website. They are back into managing assets and such like that. There's a number of reforms. They've got a civilian board. Where do you see all this stuff? I'll bring it up here in a minute. I'm going to stop here for a second and go backwards. Because as most of you know, because it's in the Q post, that we know that the Vatican Bank got some loans, a couple of loans from the Rothschilds. One loan in particular, the one from 1831, is a notable one. This is after the Napoleonic Wars. Vatican was hurting for money. They've got a lot of areas in the church, and remember the church is very large, that are desperate, and so the Vatican needed money, and they get a loan from the Rothschilds. It is negotiated by Alessandro Torlonia. He was a banker in Italy. He's the one that negotiated the loan. A couple of years later, Pope Gregory the 16th says to Cardinal Tosti, I need you to renegotiate that loan because the interest rates and there were some things in there that weren't helpful for the Vatican. And they get to the point he's looking at all these banks to try to refinance this loan. And the Karl Mayer von Rothschild comes in and says, hey, you got to tell us before you do any of this. It was a line in the contract of the loan that Alessandro Torlonia never told the Vatican about, allowed it to stay in there, and now you've got the infiltration into the Vatican Bank. So Q asks about the estimated wealth of religious organization in the billions. Most religious organizations, and I don't know what the estimated wealth of Islam is. I never even thought to look at it, to be very honest, because I know the Vatican Bank isn't worth $229 billion. At any given time, go back through history, pre-2012, at any given time, they're between $5 and $7 billion. That 229 represents money laundered through the bank. It's not Vatican wealth. And this is on public financials that have been released since 2012 that have been looking at it. The Board of Superintendents, Pope Francis did reestablish this whole thing. It was all reestablished as of 2010. It gets even more. The Supervisory Commission of Cardinals, they're on the Supervisory Commission is appointed to the IOR board for a period of 5 years. There's 5 people for 5 years. Then there's a clown connection, and I'll show you that here in a moment. We know Operation Gladio. If any of you have listened to Colonel Towner, you know all about Operation Gladio. And of course, the Vatican is key to that. You got the P2, which is the Freemasonry Lodge. You got the Sicilian Mafia, and you've got 9/11. These are all clown connections with the Vatican. And then finally, you've got the loan from 1832. That loan took effect in 1832. It was negotiated in 1831. So it's the, like I said, Alessandro played a big role in getting that loan for the Vatican. And there was a hidden secret condition in there that the Holy See may not approach any other firm or bank to refinance or get a new loan. They have to go through the Rothschilds. This is a big problem. So let me tell you about the IOR, because if you notice, that's in the 1830s, and then we're going to get up through Pope Leo the 13th, which is 1883. you've got Pope Leo the 13th, who had some money in his pocket, and he decided he wanted an institute that would be focused on where the poorest people are in getting them the aid that they need. So Pope Leo starts, it's not the IOR at first, but he starts this religious works organization so that he can start to focus some Vatican receipts on making sure that the poor are getting aid. In 1942, Pope Pius XII commissioned it as the Institute of Religious Works. And it's not a bank. It's a lot of people, we call it the Vatican Bank, but it's not. It's a money transmitter. It's not supposed to transmit money outside of the Vatican. And because of that, it's just making sure that the accounts within the Vatican are good. So it'll be for Vatican employees, cardinals, dicastery that are in the Vatican. It is strictly supposed to stay within the Vatican jurisdiction. It's not supposed to go out of the country via any other method. And when you start looking into what the IOR was doing, even though it was almost immediately corrupted, its role was to safeguard the church's money, especially, notice 1942, especially because of the war. They were really concerned, what if Mussolini, remember they're only a city-state, but they're completely landlocked by Italy. What if Mussolini gave in to Hitler? And I got some interesting decodes, and I'll show you that was a real concern with Hitler. Like I said, the Vatican became a city-state in 1929. It's called the Lateran Treaty. That treaty established the territory, made them sovereign from Italy, and established a link between the Vatican and the financial systems within Italy. So the fascist regime in Italy really damaged the monarchy's reputation. The Italy at the time was not a republic, it was a monarchy. And because of that, what he saw is a last-ditch effort to save the monarchy. So King Emmanuel III abdicated in 1946, just before the referendum, and his son took the throne. And then finally we get the monarchy falls. And that it happens by 1949, something like that. But at the time, this Lateran Treaty is between Italy, which is a monarchy, and the Vatican. So there's this piece of it. So the Holy See is the universal government of the Catholic Church and operates from Vatican City-State, which now you see, this is the Vatican City-State. A sovereign, independent territory because of the Lateran Treaty. The Pope is the ruler of both the Vatican City-State and the Holy See. The Vatican, by virtue of its design, is a monarchy. The Holy See, as the supreme body of government for the Catholic Church, is a sovereign with juridical entity with under international law. So it's really important to understand that the Vatican is a recognized state. It is the smallest state in the world, right? Almost nothing. But the issue you have is that money, wealth, in general, power, also because it's a sovereign state, you have a kind of a shield on against criminal prosecution. So this is what Q is asking in post 1950. And I'll show you something else that's interesting, because once the IOR was made a bank, the Pope hired this guy. His name is Bernardino Nogara. He's the financial advisor to the Vatican since 1929. He became the financial advisor, and he started helping the Pope manage their assets. Really interesting about this individual is, he said, you let me do my thing, and don't hold me to Catholic doctrine, and I will make sure your funds are safe. Yeah, he even invested in in companies that made abortion pills. That was so they obviously this wasn't going to work for very long, but he stayed in that position until 1954 before they finally did something else. So the goal of creating and managing the ability to handle funds for the clergy now suddenly has got this corruption built into them behind the sovereignty of a city-state. This is not going to bode well. Can you see where this goes? So now you've got Pope Pius XII. The clients that the Vatican had as of 2023 was about 12,000. In 2022, that number is down to 12,000. Well, about the same. 12,000 went up a little bit. 759. There's a slight increase due to some of I'm sorry, I got the numbers backwards. In 2023, those numbers were 12,759. In 2022, those numbers went down to 12,361. And the decrease is because ex officio, they were closing out many accounts within the Vatican Bank. Actually closed out a ton of them. And what ended up happening is the Vatican, starting in 2012, with the corrective actions that's coming in, they started losing money. Then, of course, you got 2020. There's no donations because everybody's locked down with COVID. And so you see that the Vatican Bank is now starting to operate a little differently. Here's and I'm pointing it out here. This is 2023 data. The assets entrusted to the IOR, 48% of them are for the religious orders. The departments themselves, the Holy See and the Vatican City State offices, it's 28% of the accounts. Episcopal conferences, dioceses, parishes, that's 9%. 7% for cardinals, bishops, and clergy. 6% for the employees at the Vatican, and 2% for other foundations under canon law. So we've now got a complete accountability as to who has accounts there, and they're not external to the Vatican. That was a huge change that came about as a result of what Pope Francis put in place. Like I said, we got a new IOR. They had a whole path of renewal. They detail here what they've done since 2014. And I'll show you why. The auditing began in 2013. I'll show you you'll see some of the information come up in a big way here in a little bit. But what you're looking at here is they're implementing governing bodies. They've implemented transparent policies. They've also brought in publication where they hadn't been publishing their financials every year, publicly putting them out. Now they're doing that. They've also got a Know Your Customer audit that they do. This is as a result of the international piece. They've also got tax agreements with Italy and the US. This prevents tax evasion, which is what was happening with those extra accounts they got rid of at the Vatican Bank. We got a white list of all the Italian Ministry of Economy and Finance. So now we've got the inclusion in the white list. From 2018 to 2021, they reinforced the board and the committees. They created an internal control system. They put in a bunch of new statutes. I couldn't even bring them all in, just brought in the big ones. They instituted new regulations on how the bank would operate, and they put together a rule book, if you will, for the staff so that they follow what they're supposed to do. What's really interesting to me, their investment process has been a big issue. They introduced a process that was compliant, but they also wanted the social doctrine in there. And I know people are going to go, oh, no. But no, the church's social doctrine is not the same as the Democrat social doctrine. And then they got into the SEPA circuit, which is a big achievement for them because now they're being recognized for getting their act together. And finally, they've reformed all of their first line management. They've got new management committees. They've launched this new portal. That's where all this information comes from. This is the memo from Pope Francis telling him he wants this done, and they're putting this out now showing that it's done. So here we've got a Vatican bank that has been reformed. I wanted to show, I'm bringing this one back, the Vatican bank has never managed $229 billion in assets. Like I said, it represents laundered money. In 2012, and this is before the audits began, the bank had $8.5 billion in assets, and they made a profit of $117 million. At the time, Pope Francis was in charge, 2013. Pope Francis is in charge of it. He had a commission of cardinals and the prelates that were on his behalf. They were his appointees, if you will. He added the board of superintendents, and he added some bank management levels. When you look at Bertone, he was managing all of this right here. Somebody who got fired by Pope Francis on day 4 of his papacy, he is managing a vast majority of the Vatican Bank. You can see where that goes. And these two individuals, they were a director and a deputy director. They were fired almost immediately. As of 2023, the Vatican reported 5.1 billion euros, and it is an audited and verified audit report. It's not just them putting numbers on paper. Back in 2020, it's 5.1 billion euros. Remember, there's no church. And 5.9 billion in 2023. So the receipts are starting to come up again. But what you see here is they're really making a lot of effort to reform that Vatican Bank. There's still a lot to do, but they've got a really good start here. One of the things he did was change the board of superintendents from the original 5 to 7. But he immediately fired 4 of the 5 cardinals on the board. He replaced them. You notice who this guy is. This is obviously Parolin, the new Secretary of State. He's now here. And then you've got these individuals are now a part of the effort. I'm trying to think of their names. There's 3 cardinals. Oh, here it is. I'm sorry. You've got Cardinal Thomas Collins from Toronto, Cardinal Designate Pedro Parolin. He wasn't quite Secretary of State yet. And you've got the French Cardinal Jean-Louis Turin. He's the he is the only serving member the Pope asked to stay on. Everybody else had to go. He's making some big changes. This supervisory commission was put together in 1990. This is a direct result of what was going on with the Banco Bragiano and such like that. So this came into play in the early 90s. It was established to oversee the operations of the Vatican Bank. And if you keep coming down, I'm sitting here. I told you I'd show you some clown connections. This is Cardinal McCarrick. I lost my marker again. I can't find it. There it is. This is Cardinal McCarrick. We know he's got a clown connection. He's also got a connection to the Department of State in the U.S. And this is Cardinal Bertone. We know he's got a clown connection. He's also very heavy-handed. This is the new Secretary of State wanting him out. I love that picture of him staring at McCarrick. So Bertone served as Secretary of State from 2006 to 2013. He was strictly under Pope Benedict XVI. Pope Benedict thought he was a friend, found out otherwise, and then resigned because the only way to get rid of him was to resign. Otherwise, he would have been around again. So when Pope Benedict resigned, he effectively forced all of these Curia members to resign because no operations of the church can take place when the seat is empty. When the seat of Peter is empty, you have a Camerlinga that takes care of the real urgent stuff, but all business at the Vatican ends until the new pope is appointed. And what's interesting is he resigned in February, and the new conclave didn't come together until the beginning of March. It was an unusually long, empty seat. So it's almost like a reset was happening. Do you see that? Nevertheless, he was the one that met with Fidel Castro trying to get a bilateral agreement there. He managed and filtered and manipulated information conveyed to the Pope. If you recall, remember we've got Paolo Gabriele who meets in the restaurant with Nuzzi and says they never tell the Pope anything. And we know that this is true because Vigano had to make public the fact that he had tried to get letters to the Pope and they were not given to the Pope. So he was also a gatekeeper. We know this to be fact. Bertone's management of the Roman Curia and the bank came under scrutiny due to security and financial scandals. The most notable incident was the VatiLeaks scandal in 2012, involving the threat of confidential Vatican documents given to the Italian media by Pope Benedict's brother, Butler. And also, he favored homosexuals. He's the reason why McCarrick got elevated to cardinal. McCarrick himself became the most powerful Catholic authority in the United States. In fact, he was jet-setting on behalf of the State Department. He was known as a, quote, prolific fundraiser. Read that as blackmail, but he was a prolific fundraiser, and so the Department of State used him frequently. If you know that he's a prolific fundraiser, then you can understand why they say that he was known as a kingmaker. One of the things that came out, though, is that he was ensnared in all the Cold War espionage as an agent for the CIA. He's a confidential human source. And there is credible information that he possibly was a double agent for Russia. And of course, given his background, given his history, given his sexual proclivities, he was easy to control because of that. So I find this interesting that we've got it here. What's interesting is when he was elevated to cardinal, all the cardinals in the U.S. wrote to the Vatican saying, please don't elevate him. Don't. Bertone is the reason why he got elevated. Pope John Paul II took the advice and consent of people like Bertone. He was in the prelate at the time, but he wasn't Secretary of State. The president of the Vatican Bank, this is really an interesting story. He had been the president from 1989 to 2009. He was indicted in 2018. He retired, but he got indicted in 2018 by the prosecutors at the Vatican for embezzlement. He laundered $62 million through a real estate scam between 2001 and 2007. That's telling you the auditing is happening, by the way. It's also telling you that authorities external to the Vatican is helping them do that. The case was uncovered in 2014. Isn't that interesting? Right after we started auditing, within a year of Benedict taking office. It was an internal investigation at first. One of the clients of the Vatican Bank felt something was fishy. So he worked closely with the Commission of Cardinals during his tenure. Some proceeds were deposited in a Rome bank account that was not registered on the IOR's balance sheet, according to their documents. Okay, so I don't know how many of you recognize that because now you know Pope Leo's got to have his scandals, right? They just put out that the Vatican Bank had a skeleton key process. Remember, they were running money through the payroll system, changing the credentials so you didn't know where it was. This isn't obvious. Finding this information out, it's an obvious joint partnership between Italy and the Vatican to do money laundering investigations. So he was found guilty. He went to jail. He was sentenced to 8 years, 11 months. His Lucio, this is father and son, was elder, the senior Lucio, he went to jail for 8 years and 11 months, same terms. His son got 5 years and 2 months in jail for embezzlement. So we're talking major, major money here. Right after Pope Francis becomes, remember they were already came out that the NSA is spying. This is in March 2013. Obama and he get together. They're signing a memorandum of understanding. And the agreement is that they'll work together on these money laundering investigations. Within short order, the Vatican also signed an agreement with the U.S. Department of Treasury so that they can work on tax evasion issues. So we have 2 agreements with the Vatican right now: the MOU on investigations and an MOU on with the Treasury for tax evasion purposes. This all came out. This is in March 27th, 2014, but the regulators signed in May of 2013. They're making a formal agreement here. And if you look, you got almost a year, and in between them, it seems to me what you're dealing with is information sharing between the 2 countries. I want to bring this in. So remember I showed you how Vigano was in charge. He was the governor of the Vatican. He is in charge of all operations for the Vatican. And he sent 3 letters to the Pope talking about some of the things he had found as the governor. And Parolin fired him, sent him to the U.S. as nuncio in 2014. I'm sorry, 2012. What's interesting is before he left, 2011, October 2011, he got here. Before he left, they penned an agreement with Egmont Group of Financial Intelligence Units, Egmont Financial Services Group. They penned this agreement, and I love the dates. I always love the dates. April 1st, 2011, April Fool's Day. But because he got fired, that agreement never came into play, it just sat on a shelf. Till Pope Francis came in and initiated that contract. The date that they actually entered into the group to start working together was July 4th, 2013. Can you say Pope Francis has a sense of humor? I mean, really? Freedom Day for the Americans? As soon as they started doing the auditing of the Vatican Bank, this company called Crypto Capital opens up in the Bahamas. Now they can no longer launder through the Vatican Bank, so now they're going to launder through the Bahamas. Where do you see the rest of this story? This is a crypto story that's fun, actually, because I can't believe they're that stupid. Yes, I can. So Vatican financial authorities in place. They're connecting the financial intelligence units worldwide. They're now in this network so that they can do, they can partner with other countries on investigations and such like that. Crypto Capital, I just threw the information on here. I got more to show you. But he ended up being arrested. His name is Reggie Fowler. He was called a shadow banker, by the way. $740.2 million in forfeiture, $53 million in restitution for the AAF fund. So he really got hit hard, and he was indicted and pled guilty. Indicted in 2019, pled guilty in 2022. He's not coming out for a while. Pope Francis had started revamping the Holy See's financial intelligence anti-money laundering compliance. They were trying to get into compliance with the international standards. And so as a process of doing that, that's why Egmont, because Egmont is a part of FATF. As a part of Egmont, the goal here is to make the Vatican compliant with international standards on managing and transmitting money. What's interesting is because of the laundering that came out of the 9/11 Commission report and other investigations, January 1st of 2013, all these foreign banks that were operating ATMs and such in the Vatican shut off until they said, no, we need some guarantees, because the money laundering was so bad. Another thing I wanted to point out. So 2009, Bitcoin's introduced. 2013, single price of Bitcoin goes to $1,000. You realize that is right after they started auditing the Vatican Bank. Right after Egmont begins, Bitcoin is now going up. You can see the practice there. By 2017, single price of a Bitcoin is $10,000. It got up almost to 20,000. This is the money laundering through crypto capital. So Deltec Bank, Crypto Capital, they're connected to FTX. The FTX, of course, is connected to Tether. Tether's been propping up the value of Bitcoin. Are you starting to see the pattern? This is really something else. Crypto Capital itself, we got BitMEX, but you can remember FTX. They were all charged with money laundering, and Deltec Bank did end up getting closed down. A lot of money lost there. But in 2023, the U.S. Secret Service seizes funds from Bahamian bank Deltec amid fraud investigation. That is in July of 23, when their assets finally get seized. They've been laundering all the way up till then. I believe you're going to see that name of that bank, Deltec Bank, come up again in whatever investigations released with Ukraine. Just going to take a wild stab. So the guy, he's the co-creator of Inspector Gadget. He's involved with Sam Bankman-Fried, with Deltec Bank, with Crypto Capital, and FTX. So this is a big deal on the civil side. It's now outside of the bank. You can start to see how things are connecting. I love this part of the story. And you know what else I hate? I hate talking to a wall. I feel like I'm talking to a wall. Can't keep up with the chat. I'm going to go stop now. I'm going to try to see if I can see what anybody's saying, because I'm just talking and I feel boring. Am I boring? I feel boring. So I'm going to see. So we've got AB Normal. Thank you for the subscription. I really appreciate that, even though I'm boring. Think of me as the student raising their hand often. Can you help me with knowing perhaps where this information heads? I'm assuming you know about the Catholic Church. I'm Taylor. I'm not sure what you mean by I'm assuming you know about the Catholic Church. You're going to have to dump something in there on that. And I'm going to offer this advice. Don't you assume you do. So Maggie D8 is saying she's a student too. We've been going through it in the last couple of shows. You didn't know any of this, Ambor. I'll tell you, there's even more than what I'm putting here, because I already know it's boring. So, how this hits you for those non-Catholic in here. Share from your perspective how this hits you for those of you that are non-Catholic. I'm going to make this comment. You don't have to agree with their religion. If you think priest abuse is germane only to the Catholic Church, you're sorely misinformed. And that's coming in another deck, every single seminary starting in 1921 was infiltrated. They purposefully, and I talked about this 2 shows ago, they purposefully recruited young gay men to join all the seminaries across the entire country. Every single seminary. And they did that so that they could raise through the ranks and be operative by the latter part of the 20th century, which they were. So I'm just going to point out to you, unless you know of any deep research in a non-Catholic denomination like this, showing where there are corrective actions being taken for at least the last 20 years, please hold your opinion. Please. And I'm asking nicely. It doesn't depend on one's religion. Thank you, Maggie, for saying that. Okay. Catholics. Many dislike Catholics because of Pope and hierarchical structure. It's ignorance. You don't understand something, you tend to dislike it. And it becomes a wedge discussion. But typically, if you don't understand something, you tend to dislike it. So, thank you for your comments, Amboyer. I appreciate that being put in here. Post a picture of Sean Anon above your computer screen so you don't feel like you're talking to a wall. I still do. Sorry, I do. I do. So here I am, going to get started again. I hope you're ready. In 2016, there's a cooperation agreement between the Bank of Italy and the Vatican Bank to work together on financial intelligence investigations. This is a big deal considering before that they hadn't been working together, and you've got a lot of criminality between the Italian banks and the Vatican. The Vatican was being used as a clearinghouse for dirty money. This is the Godfather 3 part of the Q posts. So we now have this agreement in place, and they're sharing information. The significance of this showed that now the Vatican, this is 2016 when they finally got this agreement made, but there's several before this for other countries. The significance here is that you see the Vatican actually working to fight financial crime, and they're trying to normalize banking relations around the world so that they can still be a part of that. What's interesting about that is the date. We got July 26, 2016. This guy, Scarano, was arrested for money laundering in 2013. So part of this is he had disappeared. The agreement they now have with Italy helps them to use Italian financial services more. And remember, this guy came out of the financial crimes unit of the Italian Secret Service. And he worked for Vigano behind getting the IOR established as the audit with Egmont, and was the go-between for the Interpol network for investigations. So you got the Vatican fully cooperating now with all of the players, and we're now in a place where we can start working through and cleaning up some of this legacy stuff. The tax agreement went into effect October 17th, 2016, just a couple months later. And they immediately came out and said, this isn't linked to the Scarano case. This is July of 2013. Scarano's arrested in October of 2013. This is not linked to the Scarano case. October, July, what do you think? You think it's linked to the Scarano case? They sign the agreement, the tax agreement, and then they can get Scarano? Interesting. So here we are now. Scarano went to jail for 11 years, I believe. He went to jail. And then we got another high-level arrest, and this is Soper is his name. He actually, I can't remember, he's in an 18-year prison sentence. He was convicted at the end of 2017 of 19 counts of indecent and serious sexual abuse, including rape against 10 boys at St. Benedict's School in Erling, where he taught. After checking with the competent authorities, I can state that the reporting system of suspicious activities of the Holy See worked. This is again in 2016. What's interesting about this is the British tried to take credit, and the Italians stepped up and said, wait, whoa, no, that was ours. And the British had to grant it back. This guy had disappeared from Italy. They found him in the UK. He'd been disappeared in the UK. So the Brits didn't help. But now their suspicious activity reports now are working, and it happened to be a transaction that he tried to get money out of his account. It went live, they caught it, brought in Egmont, brought in Interpol, and they had him within a month or so. So they got him. Then, we're getting into the Cardinal Pell stuff. Then we've got an MOU signed with Australia and Cypriot Financial Intelligence Units. This one is signed in February of 2016. Francis creates a Central Vatican Office for Economy and appoints Cardinal Pell. Did that in 2014. I put this first because this is important. Oh, this is 2014, I'm sorry. This is February 2014. 2 days, right? This is February 22nd. This is February 24th. 2 days before Cardinal Pell is appointed to the Secretary of the Economy, we've got an MOU with Australia. I'm going to tell you right now, we already know something's up. The George Pell was put in charge of that office, known as the Secretary for the Economy, it was all announced in a news statement. It came out. This is going to shake some skin over at the Vatican. Let me tell you, it's at the Secretary of State. And the Council of Cardinals met with 3 separate groups appointed by Francis to investigate the Vatican's various financial operations. There's a reason why they're going to Australia. Pell is Australian, by the way. Pell is also to put into operation a new Vatican Council for the Economy and composed of 8 cardinals or bishops that reflect the universality of the Church and 7 lay experts. He formalized a new Vatican office Monday in a decree known as the Motu Proprio. He gave the decree the Latin title Fidelis, faithful and wise manager. The title is taken from a passage in the Gospel according to Luke, where Jesus tells the parable of the servants who are put in charge of their master's goods, and one is disciplined after he puts the goods to bad use. So, all I'm going to point out here, Cardinal Pell is the agreement with Australia is important. Cardinal Pell has been on the C9 now for almost a year and a half. It's been on the C9 for a year and a half. We've got this agreement with Australia. He's in charge of the economy. Investigations are going to start coming out. He's going to start seeing things. That gets people going. Pope Benedict comes out. This is really something. Out of the clear blue, Pope Benedict writes a letter. The people at the Vatican thought, well, when he became retired, when he resigned, he was just going to go away. They were squealing like crazy. He said he was going to go away, and he didn't. I think this is when the Curious started to realize they're working together, that there's advice and consent here. Cardinal Pell ends up being arrested for sex abuse. Interesting case. 2 young boys said that he abused them when they were under the age of 13. He is charged, tried, convicted, exhausted all appeals, went to prison, and then all of a sudden, out of the clear blue, it gets reviewed and he gets out. What's interesting about this, and a lot of people, I know a few people in Australia, they're pissed that he got out because they don't know the whole story. What's interesting about this is Cardinal Bessieux is accused of funneling $3 million to Australia to set up Cardinal Pell. They wanted to get rid of him. They wanted him out of there. You look here, March 2013, Victoria Police set up Operation Tethering, going after Cardinal Pell. This is 2013. This is before any allegations are made and before he's made Secretary of the Economy. This is based on him being a part of the C9. He is a financial whiz, and that probably is where that comes from. You see that. February 2014, he's the prefect for the Secretary for the Economy. This is after Operation Tethering. Yes, Maggie D, there is... remember, the Vatican is a city-state. It's the smallest country in the world. It's got deep state, and there's a shadow government. 2014, Cardinal Pell says his department found millions, notice date, December, millions of euros in Vatican dicasteries tucked away off balance sheets. The amount consisted of 94 million euros in the Secretariat of State. You need me to show you the dates again? I mean, this date here, wait a minute. February 24th, 2014. February 22nd, 2014. December 2014. We've seen a connection. April 2016, the Secretary of State announces suspension of its first external audit of the Vatican without consulting Cardinal Pell. Brulhart, Rene Brulhart, is in the process of doing an audit, and out of the clear blue, Secretary of State says stop the audit. They never told Cardinal Pell. This is in 2016. They're also thinking we got him almost out of here. 2017, the unilaterally tells the Vatican departments to supply information to an outside auditor. That's when he brings in Deloitte & Touche. The Australian arraignment, 2017, Malone links his dismissal to the exit of Cardinal Pell, implying the two may be more than just coincidence during an overhaul of Vatican finances. So he's saying Malone was on the IOR board. Mistrial is declared in 2018. He goes through a second trial. This time a jury returns a guilty verdict. He exhausts all of his appeals and he ends up in prison in 2019. He's then he's convicted, sent off to prison to serve a 6-year sentence. Interestingly, in Australia, the media was put on a gag order by the courts. They didn't gag. They didn't say what prelate, but they didn't gag. And they actually admit later that they did break the rules of the court. So he's here at this point in December 12, 2018. He's no longer prefect for the Secretary of the Economy because he's found guilty. But he was henpecked. Q says he was the first Vatican treasurer. I'm sure that carries some weight. And Q says, number 3 in the pecking order, define pecking in animals. Pecking is also used to serve as a means to defend territory against an intruder. Pell was an intruder to the Secretariat of State. This is all being kept hush-hush, but it's not staying hush-hush. So the news outlets did admit that they broke the ban. So they ended up doing another appeal. I'm not sure how this one came about. It ends up with a Supreme Court appeal. They wanted a particular review of this case. Here's where it gets. The incidents were alleged to have occurred in and near the priest sacristy at St. Patrick's Cathedral in East Melbourne following the celebration of Sunday Solemn Mass. The victims of the alleged offending were 2 Catholic choir boys, aged 13 at the time of the event. The applicant sought leave to appeal against his convictions before the Court of Appeal on August 21st, 2019. The Court of Appeals granted leave on a single ground, one ground, which contended that the verdicts were unreasonable, could not be supported by the evidence, and dismissed the appeal. The Court of Appeal viewed 2 video recordings of a number of witness testimony, including that of the complainant. There were 2 boys, one committed suicide, now there's only one complainant. The honors their honors went on to consider the evidence of a number of, quote, opportunity witnesses who had described the movements of the applicant and others following the conclusion of Sunday solemn mass in a way that was inconsistent with the complainant's account. Their honors found that no witnesses could say with certainty that these routines and practices were never departed from, and concluded that the jury had not been compelled to entertain a reasonable doubt to the applicant's guilt. And before you go off, I know, even if you're Catholic, you don't know what they're talking about. See where it says that it happened following the Mass in the sacristy? For you Catholics, take note on Sunday when you go to church. The priest, when in the Mass robes, cannot be left alone at all. Usually a deacon is nearby, if not another priest, because they're in the person of Christ, right? They cannot be left alone. So to say that he abused these two boys in the sacristy right after Mass is a bold-faced lie. And based on that, they knew that the witness against him was lying. And it was information that was withheld in 2 trials and had to go to a 3-judge panel. They overturned the whole thing. I hope that does that sit straight? Do you get it? So he said the guy that accused him accepts the court's decision. I got a plane going over. Cardinal Pell then, on April 7th of 2020, is then released from prison. He takes a little bit of a breather. He goes back to the Vatican in the fall of 2020. Fortunately, this man has now passed. He died in 2021, I believe. And the victim says, I was never bribed. At all. Was never bribed. So I'm just going to point out something here that's really important to note. That money can still be traced. Bessieux insists that he did not funnel money to the Vatican, but somehow to Australia. Somehow $3 million ended up in Australia, and somehow on the heels of that ending up in Australia, Cardinal Pell is charged. They start investigating him. Operation Tethering. We're coming up to 2018 now. We're in 2018. You can see Pope Francis is just getting hit right, left, and center. We have the Pennsylvania grand jury report comes out. And Trotman stated Gronowski identified, pursued, groomed, and then abused his victims. This was Garonsky. I'm sorry. But this is the 2018 report. It didn't get a whole lot of tell. What did get a lot of tell, and I brought this slide back in to remind you. 2011, Vigano tried to write a letter to the Pope 3 times. Never got to the Pope. Bertone withheld it from the Pope. We've seen this before. An old playbook. As a result of the Pope not getting the letters detailing the criminality he had uncovered as governor, he then publishes his report. You've all seen it. Every one of you have seen it pretty much. He publishes his report. Look at the date. This is put out August 18th, 2018. Vigano's 18-page report is put out August 22nd, 2018. So we're within 4 days. We got this one out. Another thing a lot of people don't realize is that if you're a nuncio, you're akin to the Vatican's CIA. So when Bertone fired him from his position at the Vatican, Pope Benedict then sends him to the U.S. as nuncio. Vigano tried to stop it. He says he got instructions to come and investigate McCarrick, which he did do. This is all detailed in this 18-page report. Wait till I show you what I found, though. At first, Pope says the wolves are advising the Pope. Everybody thinks that this is out against Vigano. Read it again. He's saying Pope Francis compares the Vatican whistleblower to Satan. Who would be telling him this information? Bertone. Like I said, the wolves are advising the Pope. And this piece right here on the left, this is from the 2020 McCarrick report that was put out on the Vatican. And I'm going to tell you right now, it should have read as Mueller Report Part 2. Or 2.0, how's that? So the Pope, at the release of all this information, is saying that, Satan is going after the Curia. The people that would be telling him that would be his number 2, and that would be Bertone. Bertone fired Vigano because he embarrassed Bertone, and the Pope still didn't have that information. Now Vigano has this 18-page report. The whole world has this information. Vigano had this guy working for him. His name is Monsignor Jean-François Lethium. He's French. Can you tell? I don't speak French. He was the first counselor of the Apostolic Nunciature in D.C., so he was basically Vigano's secretary, advisor. And he publicly backed Vigano's release of that 2018 report. He said that he had personal knowledge of the sanctions that had been placed on McCarrick by Pope Benedict, and that his former boss Vigano was being truthful in his account. Vigano's statement specifically referenced a conversation that had with a former nuncio in the U.S., that would be Samby. Samby is one who died prematurely, about McCarrick. And he was told when he tried to tell people, shut up, you can't understand, you're not Italian. So as a point of reference, the participants in the conclave wanted nothing to do with another Italian pope because of this. The criminality and the close networking between the Vatican, the Italian banks, and they wanted nothing to do with an Italian pope. It was a very general feeling all around. This guy was known to be honest, have integrity. So when this comes out, verifying what Vigano's saying, now we've got Pope Francis. This is Pope Francis coming back from Ireland. He's doing a press gaggle on the plane. And he's asked about Vigano's report. This is just a few days after the Vigano report comes out. And he says, the pontiff was in Dublin on Sunday, the day of the publication, Vigano's testimony, and that day, on his flight back to Rome, he chose not to say a word. Even unto today, he has not. Here is the account, according to reputable news like Catholic News Agency. Quote, I have read the declaration this morning, said Pope Francis, and I must tell you sincerely, I must say this to you and to all who are interested. Read the declaration attentively. Form your own judgment. I will not say another word about this. And he went on to say, he believed in their journalistic capacity to draw one's own conclusions, defining it as an act of faith. When some time has passed and you have reached your own conclusions, I will be able to speak, but I would like your professional maturity to do the work for you. It will be good for you, he said to the members of the press. Asked in a follow-up question when he knew about the accusations against McCarrick, Pope said, that is part of the declaration. Study it and I will tell you. Okay, so I'm just going to point something out here. He's telling the media, dig into this report. It is pretty complete. A couple things missing, but it's a pretty good report. Telling them, dig into this. Do you get what's going on? There is a sealed case involving all of this. He can't talk because there's litigation. This is in 2018. So, I want to just point out a couple of things. This is straight from the Vigano report. First time in Vigano's letter, he's calling to the discipline of the perfect countenance. This is not the vow of celibacy, not the issue of homosexuality. The issue of homosexuality is a very serious issue that must be adequately discerned from the beginning with the candidates. If this is the case, we have to be exacting. In our societies, it even seems that homosexuality is fashionable and that mentality in some way also influences the life of the church. We have to urge homosexual priests, men and women religious, to live celibacy with integrity. Above all, that they be impeccably responsible, trying to never scandalize either their communities of the faithful, holy people of God. By living a double life, it's better for them to leave. According to Vigano, he says in the first mention, yes, the bishops in the United States must not be idealized. They must not be right-wing like the Archbishop of Philadelphia. The Pope did not give me the name of the Archbishop. They must be shepherds. They must not be left-wing. And he added, raising both arms, and when I say left-wing, I mean homosexual. This is out of the Vigano letter. Second time it's mentioned. When the new bishop, Mark Seitz, took possession of the Diocese of El Paso in 2013, I sent the first counselor, Monsignor Jean Foy, that's his secretary if you recall, while I went to Dallas that same day for the international meeting on bioethics. When we got back, he says to him, El Paso, he told me that in El Paso he had met Cardinal McCarrick, who, taking him aside, told him almost the same words that the Pope had said to me in Rome. The bishops in the United States must not be idealized. They must not be right-wing. They must be shepherds. So we're adding to here, right? They must be shepherds. Also, the Pope's mention, not like the Archbishop of Philadelphia, can be traced to McCarrick, because there had been a strong disagreement between the two of them about the admission to communion of pro-abortion politicians. In this communication to the bishop, McCarrick had manipulated a letter of then Cardinal Ratzinger, who prohibited giving them communion. Quote, indeed, I also knew how certain cardinals such as Mahoney, Levada, and Worrell were closely linked to McCarrick. They had opposed the most recent appointments made by Pope Benedict for important posts such as Philadelphia, Baltimore, Denver, San Francisco. So what he's saying here, the Pope did not give me the name of the Archbishop when he says they must not be right-wing like the Archbishop of Philadelphia. He's referring to this guy here. He's also referring to giving pro-abortion individuals communion. So I'm already finding where there's holes in what Vigano put in his 18 pages. I'll explain why in a minute. Then I did a flow chart. I show all the people mentioned in his 18 pages. In those individuals, we're going to have McCarrick in the middle. It's a short bio on each of them. Father Gregory Littleton, he was the first to fall. He called out McCarrick for seminarian abuse in 2006. Bessieux, McCarrick has known him since 2006, but Bessieux, as you know, well, you may not, you will know, Bessieux had his cardinal cap removed and was put on trial, found guilty, and there was a development in that case that just came out last month. Bukowski, he was the assistant VP for student affairs at Seton Hall. He compensated and worked with prosecutors. You've got Vigano, who's doing all of this. You got Sedano, Secretary of State, Dean of the College of Cardinals. He was instrumental in McCarrick's advancement, also tried to cover up for Father Maciel. Father Maciel is part of the gay conclave. He was a serial sexual abuser, going so far as to remove the nuncio, Justo Mueller, for not going along with the cover-up. And then you got Archbishop John Myers. He's in Newark, New Jersey. While Bishop used the church funds to expand wing with indoor pool, on his Hunterdon Country retirement home. Mental and physical health has suffered serious decline. It was compensated. So this is just one page. I'll also point out Bertone was questioned by the media in Italy about the almost million euros that were used to update his apartment. He said, there's people here with bigger houses than mine. Why are you bothering me? They do it. I do it too. Vigano also mentions these guys, Cardinal Lorenzo Balzeri and Cardinal William Levada and Aulette Filoni, Kevin Farrell, and Montanari. The information I can tell about these individuals, he says that Pietro Sambi, remember he was the nuncio, he knew, he wrote a letter. He says these two are prematurely deceased. I don't know what they died of. I've always wondered, of course, like everybody else. They're known to have had shouting matches with McCarrick, by the way. He says, and this is his comment, to dispel suspicions insinuated in several recent articles, I will immediately say that the apostolic nuncios in the United States, Gabriel Montalvo, Pietro Sambi, both prematurely deceased, did not fail to inform the Holy See immediately, which we know they did. I'll show you. As soon as they learned of Archbishop McCarrick's gravity, immoral behavior with seminarians and priests. Indeed, according to what Nuncio Pietro Sambi wrote, Father Boniface Ramsey wrote a letter requesting of the late Nuncio Montalvo in the letter. Father Ramsey, who had been a professor at the Diocesan Seminary in New York at the end of the 80s and until 96, affirms that there was a recurring rumor in the seminary that the Archbishop shared his bed with seminarians. I can't remember. These people disgust me, I'm sorry. So that this is pretty much people on this page. I'm going to go to the next slide. So he says Sambi didn't tell anybody about McCarrick. This is Sambi's letter. He actually sent the letter saying that he had grave concerns about McCarrick. This is sent out October 2006. So he did tell. As soon as he found out, after the shouting match, he wrote this letter. He then obviously died. But the Ramsey made Sandri's letter public in 2018, and it's a part of Vigano's testimony. So remember, Domenico Gianni works for Vigano. Under Vigano, they get into the IOR. They set up the Egmont Financial Services Group to begin auditing. Vigano releases the 3 letters that the Pope never got. Bertone fires him. He gets sent to the U.S. He's investigating McCarrick. And now we're saying if Vigano is afraid for his life to the point where he has to destroy his cell phone and go into hiding overseas, it is not only out of fear of being tracked down by a staffer of the Apostolic Nuntiatures and missions of the Holy See spread throughout the world, the long arm of the Secretariat of State that has ordered discovery of Vigano's whereabouts, but also, if not principally out of dread for the intelligence capabilities of the Vatican City State paramilitary corps of Gendarmeries of the Vatican City State, currently led by Domenico Gianni. So this is obviously in 2018. Remember that he resigned as nuncio in 2016 because he had reached the age of 75, which is the age of compulsory retirement. So he retires. He writes his 18-page discourse, gets published in 2 years later. All of this was to get it out after, notice the timing, after the grand jury report in Pennsylvania, which is detailing the sex abuse. You've got also, around the same time as all of this happening, you've got the big investigation going on in the Vatican that Pope Benedict commissioned. All of this is happening all at the same time. We're getting all of this information around the same. I'm telling you, it is seeming to me, given the inaccuracies and some of the things he says in those 18 pages, I see Vigano as a sort of cue for the Pope. Had Vigano not gone public with what he has, and he's very careful about what he puts out, we may not have known what was going on at the Vatican, or at least known to look in some of the places we have, because of some of the things he said. So I'm just saying, I think there's more to Vigano. I think there's more to that story. I think he'll be fine. Can't go can't go backwards too far, right? Where's my... There it is. So this brings me to 2020. This stupid McCarrick report. I couldn't wait for this thing. I read it. I was disgusted. One of the things they say in this is the written instructions. This is when Vigano comes to the U.S. as nuncio. The written instructions provided to Archbishop Vigano from the Congregation of Bishops prior to his arrival at the Nunciature in Washington, D.C., made no mention of McCarrick. However, Cardinal Ouellet, who had become prefect in the late June 2010, recalled telling Archbishop Vigano in person that McCarrick was supposed to adhere to certain conditions and restrictions due to some rumors surrounding his past behavior. So here you've got the deep state trying to minimize Vigano and trying to hide behind some facts. In his 2018 statement, composed long after his retirement, they say it's 2 years later. He retired first. So he served as the nuncio for about 5 years. He got here in 2011, left in 2016, compulsory retirement. He was appointed by Benedict in 2011, was succeeded by Christophe Pierre in 2016 upon his retirement. And then finally, at the end of all of this, and I still did it early. Did I go too fast? I am looking at the entirety of Pope Francis's papacy within 4 days of taking his seat. He fires Bertone. He gets the financial stuff going again, where Bertone had tried to stop it. Pope Francis gets it going. We've got audits happening. We've got MOUs being signed all around the world. We've got the agreements, and we're co-working on financial investigations. The Vatican, at the same time, is coming up to speed with international financial standards. They're actually passing audits. They're actually getting good grades with the international community for handling and dealing with money laundering and such like that. We're seeing pretty good people, a pretty good number of people go down for all sorts of crimes. And there's still many more that are going down. Next week, I'm going to start getting into the crime of what they call the crime of the century. And that's the big series of crimes that connects all of these together. The crime of the century is no longer, I don't believe, embarrassing for the Vatican, especially when you start seeing the worldwide connections. I'm going to remind everybody, when Durham charged Danchenko, there was a Bessieux connection. Bessieux is a cardinal that's in the crime of the century. He was found guilty of espionage. So I'm just, when we say everything is connected and you've got to take all three sides of the triangle down together, this is a big deal when you start looking at what the Vatican has accomplished and what Pope Leo the 13th has to accomplish now, or 14th rather, has to accomplish now. He's got to finish the job. He doesn't have the benefit of Benedict. He doesn't have the benefit of Francis to get the background. He does have the benefit of his secretary. So you've got this individual, Aldo, who can help him out. You've got the C9 who have been involved since 2013. Pope Leo said in his teaching that he put out, he will continue the job of Francis. And you know what's really interesting is right after that, what started happening? All this negative news coming out about the Pope, the Vatican, taking his words out of context. This is a regular playbook. he is about to do some serious kick butt. And I'm really glad to see that. So now that I've listened to myself for 2 hours, almost 2 hours, what, hour and 45 minutes, I want to know what you guys think. Okay, and I've been missing some of the conversation in here. It was an infiltration into the church, Maggie. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, I'm trying to go back. Okay, guys, I'm just going to say one thing. The anti-Catholic over the child abuse and the child sex scandal, you're not going to change anybody's mind. They've already decided what they believe and what they think. You're typing. I appreciate you're trying to speak to it. But if somebody doesn't want to hear the evidence, doesn't want to hear what's really going on, you're not going to change that. As somebody who is a cradle Catholic, I've been going through this my entire life, I'm accustomed to it. And I can handle those that would rather point a finger and look at it, anything else. So don't worry about it. And I don't try to be nasty, but this is a sensitive topic for everybody, not just a Catholic. It would be fair if we listen to the evidence or the research, at least the research. But I asked from the beginning, just hear me out. Have all the opinions you want. And if what you're hearing me out with sounds like I'm sugarcoating or whitewashing what's going on at the Vatican, then I would invite you not to come back for part 4. How's that? Is that fair? Okay, I still don't understand the reasoning behind them recruiting the homosexuals. Because in the Catholic Church, well, 2 things. One, the sexual proclivity is something you can hold over somebody. That's blackmail, bribery, all of that. So it doesn't even matter which religion, because it's a gotcha. In the Catholic Church, there's a vow of celibacy. So you got an added benefit of taking down the largest Christian church in the world because they broke the vow of celibacy. The other part of that, and we already know, like I said, we've got the research. McCarrick was a CIA operative, believed to be a counter intel operative, working on behalf of Russia as well. Everybody had a piece of McCarrick. And when you hear the Secretary of State in the U.S. say he's a prolific fundraiser, I read that as blackmailer. I think they had McCarrick where they wanted him. And what did McCarrick do? He recruited his replacements. That's the way that works. What's interesting is after McCarrick was found guilty at the Vatican, none of the courts in the United States decided to hold him or charge him or try him. Suddenly he's too old and too feeble. He's been here all these years, nobody did anything. The reason why is because you know darn well McCarrick knew some people. So I don't know who he talked to. Jackie, Satan hates more than the Catholic Church. He hates anybody that's religiously affiliated. Catholic means universal, yes. Unified. No, Vigano is not up to no good. No, he's not up to no good. What he's doing is he's raising awareness to issues. I explained last week about the conciliar church, what his concerns are. I'll get into that in another deck, go down into a bigger rabbit hole as to what he's talking about. But I explained it last week, where I was telling you in a conciliar church, what they're doing is they're trying to move the Vatican away from a state monarchy and into a more democratic process. And his contention is that the Vatican is a monarchy and shouldn't be run as a democratic process, because he believes that it will erode the authority of the Pope, because everything's run by councils. And it's a valid concern. So it's not that Vigano's doing that. He's raising concerns, number one. Number two, he put out information that nobody would have known about. And I realize a lot of people probably didn't read the 18 pages, but he put a lot of information in those 18 pages that a lot of people would have not had they'd not had any clue about any of it had it not been for Vigano. And what does the Pope need? You've got an infiltration going on, the wolves in the Vatican. They've got the mainstream media. They've got these other leverage points around the world with governments and such like that. They've got everything they need to go after Pope Francis. At this time, it was Pope Francis. This is, remember all the stories. He's going to die. He's going to resign. We kept hearing all of that. None of it was true. We've already got reports coming out where they take him out of context. And what is it doing? It's eroding the faith and trust, not just in your institutions, because every time they tell you that something happened with our own government, it erodes faith and trust in the government. Well, when they're doing this against Francis, it's eroding faith and trust in your religion. And since religion is personal, that matters. So what is Vigano doing? He's making darn sure you've got the information. I think. I do think he is definitely... It is interesting to me that he could raise Holy Cane in 2011, put out those 3 letters, get fired. He says he had a meeting with the Pope. He did not want to come to the U.S. as nuncio. He wanted to stay there doing what he had started as the governor. By the way, he did delay it into the Feast of the Martyrs, which is September, which I find interesting, the day he got here. But he said Pope Benedict told him to come here and investigate McCarrick. He came. Not that he would have said no to Pope Benedict, but he did come. And he came and he did his job for 5 years. So I think what you're talking about here is somebody that did have a more of a personal audience with the Pope. Somebody that did have more of a direct connect. One of the things we learn about Francis and Benedict is that they talked on the phone several times a week. Before every trip, they talked on the phone. So you've got an individual who likes connecting with people in Pope Francis, and he's got people working in his circle to do the same thing he's doing, try to uncover and deal with the criminality. I'm pretty sure Vigano was his mouthpiece. That's the best I can do. I know it's subjective. It's not. It's the best I can do, only because I've seen too many things that just don't square. As soon as he gets fired, and then all of a sudden we got the McCarrick story coming up at the same time. You got all these things that the synchronicity is something else. Okay, I'm going down through these chats. Yeah, Maggie, a lot of people say that when they see what I've got. They've never seen Francis that way. One of the things to remember is, first of all, a lot of people questioned the legitimacy of the election of Pope Francis. They believed, in fact, still people believe, that the U.S. administration, the Obama administration, had something to do with Benedict stepping down. Did not. And mainly because Obama went there in 2013. This is where people made that connection, that they were putting in a liberal pope that a liberal president could work with. That's what's been going around. And what did we find out as we're going through this? First of all, Pope Francis did not change any doctrine. He has his opinions. We don't have to agree with them. It is not doctrine. We don't have to, they're just words. He not only took on what Benedict started, he advanced it so far it can't be undone. A lot more can be done. A lot more is going to be done. But they can't reverse anything he did in the 8 years he was Pope. Right? So 8 years, 2013. No, I'm sorry, 11 years he was Pope. So I'm just saying, almost 13 years. So I'm just saying, I don't know that if we look at, if we keep a certain lens on, you're going to get the answer you want. When you take those lenses off and you just start looking at everything else, and you see look at what he accomplished. If he was the liberal that wanted to really radically change the church, it didn't happen. Never, no doctrine's ever been changed. The other thing is if he's your sycophant, if he's the person you want in place, explain to me why the media was compelled to take him out of context. If he was the guy, the Sangala Mafia wanted him, if he's the guy, why did they consistently take him out of context? To the point where people are just, you got to defend every word the Pope says because the media twisted it. And I can prove it every single time. So he can't be the scab people think he is. At that point, then you're opened up to seeing, well, what else did he do? And that's when you start looking at the accomplishment list. Got a lot done in the time he was Pope. I hope that helps, does it? Why would I be revealing evil, Taylor? I'm showing how it's been systematically defeated. What? I'm not revealing evil. Wait a minute. Wait a minute, let me go back. If you listen to what Feisty is saying, she is showing what God is winning. Yes, I am. You sound like beer. He loves to bake noodles. I never saw Francis this way. But you're right. What is the main battle? Good versus evil. Okay. I'm going to leave the good versus evil aside. The only agenda I have when I put this stuff together is to show you the stuff you didn't see, that you never knew about. If you know that this is going on at the Vatican, and I defy anybody in here to tell me they knew this was going on at the Vatican, because I've not been allowed to talk about this stuff until I started my own channel. This stuff nobody's mentioning it. People they hear something Vatican, they have their opinion, they move on, they never looked into it. There's some amazing things happening over there, to the point where they've got a whole new constitution to plug holes. They've got all new leadership, not just at the courier level, but they've got all new leadership in frontline management. Everybody's changed out. They've gotten rid of anybody that wasn't following the ethics rules that they had in place. So we are where we are. Each day, as a new evil is brought from the hidden darkness into the light, where we learn about it, we know where victories have already occurred, where battles still will happen. It means we're winning. Yes, I agree with that. Vigano excommunicated. What is the current status? Help me to wrap my head around this. First of all, that is something for Pope Leo the 14th to deal with. There is no status that I'm aware of. I would assume that Vigano has sent his appeal to the Pope, but I don't know. It's been several months. I don't know. I've not seen anything new come out. What about the weird things Francis did, like promoting paganism and calling for open borders? Was that all distortion? Okay, he didn't promote paganism. The Pachamama to the Amazonian people is the Holy Mother. In fact, if you go back and look at the video and look at it carefully, they're even making the sign of the cross. So they're very much Christian. There's that one. The blessing the ice. It's a 1,000-year-old block of ice. Catholics, I'm shocked that you would be offended by it. When you go into church, you put your finger in what? Holy water. What is ice? If you go to Genesis, read about the sixth day when Adam was formed. What is the first commandment God gives Adam? You shall be steward over all creation. The fact that the Pope has to remind you that we are stewards of this earth, and you automatically think that he is a globalist with a climate change agenda, I'm surprised, because that's not Christian. And at no point have any of them done anything that would align them with globalists. So what's another one? I'll tick them off if you want. That's 3 right there. The open borders. He's never said, if you go back and read, it's a good document. It's got a lot of paragraphs. I know, for people that like to have things read to them. He's not talking open borders. He is talking dignity of the migrant. That's all he mentions. He doesn't say countries open up your borders. He believes that countries need borders. That's a basic rule. What he's talking about is don't treat these people like chattel. And that's what he sees happening. This is what he believes is happening in this country. And he does not like it. When Trump is out there bombastically saying, we're deporting them as fast as we can buy them on planes, that is not something the Pope would be in favor of. Pope Francis wasn't in favor of it. Pope Benedict wasn't in favor of it. Pope John Paul II wasn't in favor of it. They all sang from the same sheet of music. Dignity of the human. So there's that one. Okay, relate those winnings to how I pray. And all POTUS and team world are changing, will not be able to be made evil again. That is biblical. Yes. I don't know that you can get rid of evil. And that's my opinion. I don't think you can get rid of evil. Man has a sinful nature. What you do is you make darn sure that it can't take over like it has. You relegate it, make it ugly again. And you make good people good again. Make it great again. You know, if we enforce our laws and we act with integrity and we actually decide to live by a moral and value code that is amenable to Jesus, then we stand on top. Evil will always come out, and we will be able to do something about it. Okay. I was not a fan of Francis, though. I have to tell you, I wasn't either until I did my research. I never realized how Catholic has been maligned through media and certain so-called scholars. Let me tell you something. Catholic is always maligned. It's the easiest one to malign. This country was founded on anti-Catholic sentiment. I'll show you that in another deck. I wasn't either, but I didn't know all this stuff Feisty just shared with us. I'm glad you got something out of it, Maggie. Feisty, have you addressed the Pachamama issue? Yes, I just did. Did you miss it? Pachamama is the Holy Mother. Go back and look at the video. They actually make the sign of the cross several times. I know. Dr. Taylor Marshall took it and went off in left field with it. A lot of people listened. Go back and look at the video. It wasn't bad. I wasn't offended by the blessing of the ice. I was amused by it. All he did was make a blessing. It could be funny to anybody, but the purpose of that was true. It's a 1,000-year-old block of ice. The purpose of that blessing was a reminder that we need to be stewards. You know, when I was growing up, we had Keep America Beautiful cans on every street corner. Those have gone away. We don't even think about being a steward of our planet. Our oceans are a disaster. I'm not even talking about, windmills and crap like that. That's a money scam. I'm talking about just being proud of where you live and keeping it clean. We don't do that anymore. I'm glad the questions were answered, Maggie. Oh, you wrote it before I said it. Okay, Jackie. Thank you. So with that, it is 6:04. Hopefully that Did I answer all the questions? Because it is time. I can't believe it. I just finished my second show. And next time I got to get somebody on with me. I hate talking by myself. I know it feels boring to me. It must be boring to most of you. Thank you again. I appreciate it. I really appreciate all you do. Thank you. If you like it, please thumbs up, share it. If you like the work, support my work. I would really appreciate it. Until then, I'll see you next time. That's Monday with Sean. Tonight I'm on Real AF's show. I don't know what we're doing at 8 o'clock. And then Monday with Sean, and again next Wednesday. And Tuesday now. Every Tuesday with Scott, Beer at the Parade. And then Wednesday will be my show. So, I hope you enjoyed. With that, take care, everybody.
Whispers in the static, questions in the fire. The veil is torn and the seeker never tired. Scrolls of the ancients carved into stone. She reads between lines while the empire grows. The priesthood of medicine, prophets of law. She claws through the curtain, exposing the flaw. No map, no guide, just shadow she tracks. Every thread pulled is a world turned back. The faithful will know, though the words may be few. To the blind, every truth is a riddle untrue. Claws of reason, eyes of flame, unmasking the player in the shadow game, where the silence breaks, the hidden shake. She names the unspoken, the world away. Historians' eye on the ruins of men, cycles repeating again and again. Digital soldier, a phantom, a spark, a voice through the wires ignites the dark. Voice of iron, breath of dust, piercing the empire built on rust. Keeper of the flame, she stakes her claim, illuminates the nameless, calls them by name. Through Babylon's towers, through Rome's broken gates, she carries the question that history hates. No creed, no tyrant, no mask will remain. When the feisty one whisper your true name. Claws of reason, eyes of flame, unmasking the players in the shadowed game, where the silence breaks, the hidden shakes. She names the unspoken,